So let me know in the comments if you like the new opening image. I thought three Labradors would be more fun than pot. This is the Home Security Force Jelly, Peanut Butter, and Hobbs. Hobbs is the one on the right. He's an old man now. Peanut and Jelly are brother and sister. Anyway, we're going to be doing Eastern Shore Gumbo today, which basically means a gumbo technique, but ingredients that you could find in the town where I went to high school, and a town where I loved the food. So you may say, Les, what makes this enhanced? And what makes it enhanced is every now and then you're going to see a blackboard with some writing on it, and that's a place to pause because there's stuff that would be in a written recipe. Take a look. So I'm going to apologize to my friends in Cambridge right up front with regard to some of the ingredients I'm using. I live in Colorado, and some of the things that I would like to use I don't have access to out here. But anyway, this is going to be a gumbo technique, and some people are afraid of making gumbos, really because they're afraid of making a roux. It's not that hard. We'll show you how to do it. So the roux is in front. That's that 4 tablespoons of flour and 4 tablespoons of butter. The protein that's going in here is crab, and that's really blue crab. That's Phillips blue crab, those 2 containers, the red and the green one. But I was not able to find Chesapeake oysters, so those are just oysters I can buy at my grocery store. I think they come from Korea. The veggie mix is a semi-typical gumbo mix. Onion and celery, very typical, but instead of green bell peppers, I like to use Anaheim's. I think they add a little more zip. For the stock, I'm going to use a mix of clam juice and seafood stock that you can find at any grocery store. If I was hanging out with one of my buddies, their moms could probably make me an awesome seafood stock. I'm also going to use a little bit of miso to add some umami, some unctuousness to this dish. And miso is fermented soybean paste, and soybeans come from the shore. So there you go. A little bit of garlic goes in with the veggie mix just because it adds flavor. And then the seasoning, instead of being a Creole or Cajun mix, I'm going to use Old Bay. This is fantastic. Step 1 is prep your veggies. You're going to finely chop up some celery, and then you're going to do the same thing with the garlic, and then the Anaheims, and then the onions. Move the filming equipment over to the stovetop. We're going to make a roux, so 4 tablespoons of butter is going in on sort of medium-high heat. We're going to get that butter a little active, and as soon as it's active, we're going to add this 4 tablespoons of flour. Trying to get the butter melted here. There we go. 4 tablespoons of flour goes in, and now we're just going to stir, and you can't walk away from this, right? You got to keep stirring. You got to get all the flour incorporated in that butter, and then you're watching the color. It's going to start out like a really light brown, eventually start to become a darker brown. Once it's darker brown, add the veggies and get those veggies coated in that roux and start softening them right here in that roux. So let's take a moment and talk about roux. So we can look at Labradors while we talk about roux. The ratio of how much roux you make to how much other liquid you add is going to determine how thick the sauce part of this is. I don't like mine gravy-like. I like mine a little thinner, a little more stew-like. So I'm using 4 tablespoons of butter and flour to a fair amount of other liquids. And I will add water to it if I think it's too thick afterwards. But if you like yours more like gravy, then go ahead and go with 8 tablespoons of butter and flour, and don't add as much other liquid, and your gumbo will be very gravy-like. It's not my preference. So now that we've softened the veggies, it's time to start seasoning and adding liquid. So I'm going to go with a couple tablespoons of Old Bay here. I'll add about a tablespoon later. Get that Old Bay all incorporated with the veggies. And now it's time to start adding the liquids in. I'm going to start with the very flavorful ones. You can see I need to get off the heat here because I'm starting to smoke too much. And I'm going to start with clam juice. Clam juice is quite flavorful. And you can find it in most grocery stores, and it's a great seafood stock. So I use a couple of jars of clam juice here, and then I'm going to take the liquor, which is what you call the liquid that's inside canned oysters, and I'm going to add the liquor from those 2 cans of oysters in here, and get that all nice incorporated, and get the temperature in the pot back to the right place where I want it, which is kind of a simmer. And at this point, it's time to go ahead and put those oysters in, because I want them to cook just a little bit. And then once the oysters are in, it's time to think about the last batch of liquid that I intend to use. But before I do that, I'm going to drop the miso in here, which is that fermented soybean paste. So I'm going to put about a tablespoon of miso in here, and keep in mind that I've still got about a tablespoon of Old Bay that I'm going to add later. And miso and Old Bay are both quite salty, so keep in mind this is meant to be served with rice. If you don't like yours with rice, I would go with maybe a teaspoon or 2 teaspoons of miso, and maybe only 2 tablespoons total of Old Bay. So now it's time to go in with the crab, and this is where I'm going to do that last tablespoon of Old Bay right on top of that crab, and then mix it in. And we're really close now. I just need the rest of the liquid, which is that seafood stock that comes in a carton, and I'm going to use this whole carton. And like I said, I like mine with a stew-like consistency as opposed to a gravy-like consistency. So that works out, this amount of liquid in comparison to the amount of roux I started with. So you're done. You've made gumbo. All you need is time now. I would say this will be edible in 20 minutes, but if you give it an hour on a simmer, it'll be much better. Alright, so this is a food wine pairing episode. There's my rice, and again, with that much Old Bay and miso, you need rice to sort of cut the saltiness. And then I'm going to serve right on top of my rice, and the wine is a 2018 Riesling from Storm Cellar. It's an off dry. It's a little bit sweet. And this is a little spicy and a little salty, so the Riesling is a great choice. My friends at Storm Cellar have some great deals right now. I recommend you reach out to them. So those that know me know I'm involved in the wine industry, and this is a tough time for people who make wine and beer and things in the small independent nature. So supporting them is a really good thing to do now. This gumbo's delicious, and this off-dry white is about as perfect a pairing as you can find. I started a wine cellar recently, and I started with 3 bottles of this Riesling, figuring that, all right, that'll last me a while. Well, this is the 2nd bottle, so I'm down to 1 right now. That's how useful this is. Alright, we're going to finish with an image of the home security force here too. This gumbo was spectacular. It's one of the best gumbos I've ever made. I really do recommend my friends, especially those from the Eastern Shore, like and share with your friends. Give it a try. That off-dry Riesling is an excellent pairing for the salty and spicy nature of this dish. So even if you can't reach out to my friends at the Storm Cellar, look at a winery near you and see if you can't find an off-dry white to go with this. I think you're going to be really pleasantly surprised.